The army that could not be seen, Elisha's chariots of fire. Everyone remembers the great battles of the Old Testament. But the real moment was when an entire army was defeated without a single sword being raised. It happened around 850 BC in a small, unwalled city called Dothan. One man against thousands. The math was simple. The outcome seemed certain, but the numbers didn't tell the whole story. Because something was standing on that mountain. Something the king of Syria couldn't see. And when the right eyes finally opened, it became clear that this prophet had never been alone. For decades, the kingdoms of Israel and Syria lived in a state of constant tension. It wasn't a declared war of open fields and formal banners. It was a war of shadows, ambushes, swift attacks, territorial disputes, small armies moving through dark valleys and hidden mountain passes. On the Syrian side stood King Ben-Hadad, a man who commanded the most feared war machine in the region. His chariots were built to crush enemy formations. His archers were renowned for deadly accuracy. The infantry had already conquered entire cities. His plan was simple and effective. Every move was calculated to catch the king of Israel off guard. Strategic crossroads, narrow valleys, high mountain passes, places where an army would have no room to maneuver. But something impossible began to happen. Every time Ben-Hadad positioned his troops for a trap, the Israelites simply didn't appear. He chose a valley for the ambush. They took another route. He set a trap on a road. They passed by a different way. Once is a coincidence. Twice is luck, but this happened several times. The biblical text says this occurred not once or twice, but repeatedly. It was as if the enemy knew his plans before they were even executed. For a military commander, there is no greater nightmare than this. If the enemy knows your strategy, you have already lost the war before the battle begins. Distrust turned into paranoia. Ben-Hadad gathered his generals and war advisors in a secret room. The air was thick with suspicion. Someone here is a traitor, he declared. At that time, espionage was punished with immediate death. The officers looked at each other in silence until one officer finally spoke. The problem wasn't military, the problem was spiritual. There was a prophet in Israel named Elisha, an elderly man who knew the words spoken in the Syrian king's private bedroom. He didn't have scouts. He didn't have human spies. He had the Spirit of God. The king's decision was immediate. If the problem was one man, then eliminate that man. The nature of the war had changed. The entire Syrian military strategy now had a single target, Elisha. The king of Syria didn't send a small detachment. He sent a heavy military force, horses, chariots, thousands of soldiers. A massive, disproportionate mobilization to capture one unarmed man. The spies reported Elisha was in Dothan, a small city situated in a hilly region, an easy target. The Syrian army marched through the night to avoid the heat, to preserve the horses, to reach the target before any warning could spread. They crossed dark valleys and climbed the hills in silence. Before the first glimmer of dawn, the siege was complete. Cavalry at every exit, chariots on every main route. Infantry closing the accesses. No exit, no messenger, no hope for escape. Somewhere inside that small city, an elderly prophet still slept. And it was his servant who saw it first. He opened the door to fetch water. The sight was a total nightmare. The hills were gone. They were replaced by the glint of Syrian steel. Flags fluttering in the cold morning wind. Spears raised, formations ready to advance. The servant recoiled in terror. His heart raced. His breath was short. He ran to the prophet with a cry of total despair. "Oh, my lord, what shall we do?
What shall we do?"
An army against two unarmed men. The end had arrived. But Elisha didn't flinch. He didn't even look out the window. His voice was steady, calm, unyielding. Do not be afraid, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. The servant looked around the small room. 1, 2. The math did not add up. Then Elisha prayed, not for safety, not for destruction. He prayed for sight.
Lord,
I ask you to open this young man's eyes so that he may see. The veil was lifted. The physical world remained, but the spiritual world was finally revealed. The mountain was no longer just rock and shadow. The entire hill was covered. Horses of fire, chariots of fire, a celestial army positioned between the city and the Syrians. These were not wooden wheels or iron axles. They were pulsating flames, live embers in the shape of vehicles. Luminous structures, a living wall of light. They were organized, aligned, in battle formation. The servants stood frozen. The human threat had not changed. The Syrian spears were still sharp, but the reality was different. The Syrians weren't surrounding the prophet. They were surrounded by the host of heaven. The fear vanished. Not because the danger was gone, but because the truth was greater than the danger. On one side, flesh, blood, and bronze. On the other side, fire, spirit, and light. The decisive battle was already over, and it had been won in the invisible world. The Syrian army began to descend. They saw a defenseless old man. Elisha walked out to meet them, not with a sword, but with a second prayer. Lord, strike these people with blindness. In an instant, the most feared army in the region was lost. Not in darkness, but in total confusion. Trained soldiers could not distinguish the path. Commanders could not find their troops. The war machine was broken without a single blow. Elisha stood before them, the very man they sought. This is not the way, he told them. Follow me, and I will lead you to the man you seek. The hunters became the sheep. The blind army followed the voice of the prophet. A 19-kilometer march, thousands of soldiers led by one man. Into the heart of Samaria, into the capital of their enemies. When the vision returned, they weren't in Dothan. They were in the middle of the Israelite army. The servant in Dothan learned a truth that echoes today. You are never alone, even when the siege is complete. Even when the math says there is no way out, the mountain is full. If you believe that God is your protector today, I want you to make a bold declaration. Type, "The mountain is full" in the comments right now. Let this be your witness to the world. If this cinematic journey through the Word moved you, make sure to like this video. Subscribe to Biblical Historicult for more deep dives into the mysteries of the Bible. Share this with someone who feels surrounded today. Show them they aren't alone. God bless you.